All right, November 16th, 2018, part 2. Today's number value is 20, 20, 11 and 9, 9 and 11. Wild times. We're just reading this caption here. Above the Garden of Eden, depicted as a walled, W-A-L-L-E-D, eld, and womb-like garden. Don't forget, matrix means womb originally. It's connected to etymologically to matter from mater, mother in Greek. A 15th century painting and showing the expulsion of Adam and Eve, their eviction from Eden, from the east. At Aries, arise. Right, a golden age of primitive naturalness is pictured in a 16th century painting by Cranach entitled Earthly Paradise. Far right, the 16th century Flemish artist Bruegel's Land of Coquin, a mythical land of sensual delights and easy living, stories of which were widely popular in medieval Europe, especially among the hard-working peasants and serfs. So the last sentence we read in this section, The Soul of Man and Man and His Symbols, by Carl Jung. Doubleday, of course. It was precisely this conflict within man. It says here, life is a battleground, it always has been and always will be, and if it were not so, existence would come to an end. It's page 85. It was precisely this conflict within man that led the early Christians to expect and hope for an early end to this world, or the Buddhists to reject all earthly desires and aspirations. These basic answers would be frankly suicidal if they were not linked up with peculiar mental and moral ideas and practices that constitute the bulk of both religions, and that to a certain extent modify their radical denial of the world. I stress this point because in our time, there are millions of people who have lost faith in any kind of religion. Such people do not understand their religion any longer. While life runs smoothly without religion, the loss remains as good as unnoticed. But when suffering comes, it is another matter. That is when people begin to seek a way out and to reflect about the meaning of life and its bewildering and painful experiences. It is significant that the psychological doctor, within my experience, is consulted more by Jews and Protestants than by Catholics. This might be expected, for the Catholic Church still feels responsible for the cura animarum, the care of the soul's welfare. But in this scientific age, the psychiatrist is apt to be asked the questions that once belonged in the domain of the theologian. People feel that it makes or would make a great difference if only they had a positive belief in a meaningful way of life or in God and immortality. The specter of approaching death often gives a powerful incentive to such thoughts. From time immemorial, men have had ideas about a supreme being, one or several, and about the land of the hereafter. Only today do they think they can do without such ideas. Because we cannot discover God's throne in the sky with a radio telescope, or establish for certain that a beloved father or mother is still about in a more or less corporeal form, people assume that such ideas are not true. I would rather say they are not true enough, for these are conceptions of a kind that have accompanied human life from prehistoric times and that still break through into consciousness at any provocation. Modern man may assert that he can dispense with them, and he may bolster his opinion by insisting that there is no scientific evidence of their truth, or he may even reject the loss of his convictions. But since we are dealing with invisible and unknowable things, for God is beyond human understanding and there is no means of proving immortality, why should we bother about evidence? Even if we did not know by reason our need for salt in our food, we should nonetheless profit from its use. We might argue that the use of salt is a mere illusion of taste or superstition, but it would still contribute to our well-being. Why then should we deprive ourselves of views that would prove helpful in our crises and would give a meaning to our existence? And how do we know that such ideas are not true? Many people would agree with me if I stated flatly that such ideas are probably illusions. What they fail to realize is that the denial is as impossible to prove as the assertion of religious belief. We are entirely free to choose what point of view we take. It will in any case be an arbitrary decision. There is, however, a strong empirical reason why we should cultivate thoughts that can never be proved. It is that they are known to be useful. Man positively needs general ideas and convictions. Man positively needs general ideas and convictions that will give a meaning to his life and enable him to find a place for himself in the universe. He can stand the most incredible hardships when he is convinced that they make sense. He is crushed when, on top of all his misfortunes, he has to admit that he is taking part in a quote-unquote tale told by an idiot. It is the role of religious symbols to give a meaning to the life of man. The Pueblo Indians believe that they are the sons of Father Sun, and this belief endows their life with a perspective and a goal that goes far beyond their limited existence. It gives them ample space for the unfolding of personality and permits them a full life as complete persons. Their plight is infinitely more satisfactory than that of a man in our civilization who knows that he is and will remain nothing more than an underdog with no inner meaning to his life. Did you just catch what he said there? He said that, yep, the Pueblo Indians have a much happier life than any civilized man ever does. Quote unquote civilized, right? And here we got left, a South American tribe's ritual boat burial. The dead man, placed in his own canoe, is given food and clothing for his journey. Religious symbols and beliefs of every kind give meaning to men's lives. Ancient peoples grieved over death. Write an Egyptian figurine. An Egyptian figurine representing mourning, mourning, which was found in a tomb. Yet their beliefs made them also think of death as a positive transformation. So you can mourn it, right? And see its sadness and its sorrow. Feel that, right? Obviously, it hurts. And also, though, you can also find a positive meaning to it. Rebirth also is there involved. It's not an end, an absolute end. It's a relative end. The only kind there could ever be. It's only the sphere. There's only one shape. A sense of a wider meaning to one's existence is what raises a man beyond mere getting and spending. If he lacks this sense, he is lost and miserable. Had St. Paul been convinced that he was nothing more than a wandering weaver of carpets, he certainly would not have been the man he was. His real and meaningful life lay in the inner certainty that he was the messenger of the Lord. One may accuse him of suffering from megalomania, but this opinion pales before the testimony of history and the judgment of subsequent generations. The myth that took possession of him made him something greater than a mere craftsman. Such a myth, however, consists of symbols that have not been invented consciously. And remember, when he's saying myth, he's not saying lie. He's talking about a story, an idea, an archetype. And it consists of symbols that have not been invented consciously. They haven't been contrived. They have happened. It was not the man Jesus who created the myth of the God-man. It existed for many centuries before his birth. He himself was seized by this symbolic idea, which, as St. Mark tells us, lifted him out of the narrow life of the Nazarene carpenter. Myths go back to the primitive storyteller and his dreams, to men moved by the stirring of their fantasies. These people were not very different from those whom later generations have called poets or philosophers. Primitive storytellers did not concern themselves with the origin of their fantasies. It was very much later that people began to wonder where a story originated. Yet centuries ago, in what we now call ancient Greece, men's minds...
Sonata in D with the Eroica Trio, a group of friends who've actually played musical instruments since they were little girls. It's 8:37 and coming up, Haydn's Alleluia Symphony.
Listeners make up WCRB's most important source of funds.
Hallelujah Symphony coming up, y'all.
Have joined the Ralph Lowell Society by giving $1,500.
We're going to look at this now above a child's drawing of a tree.
A special group of supporters who help ensure that great classical music is always available to you and everyone in our
with the sun above it.
To find out more about joining
a tree is one of the best examples of a motif that often appears in dreams and elsewhere, and that can have an incredible variety of meanings.
And Spectacle Management, presenting the Vienna Boys Choir
Spectacle Management
on Saturday evening, December 1st at Plymouth Memorial
Child's
Park,
drawing of a tree.
And Sunday afternoon, December 2nd at Carey Hall in Lexington. The Vienna Boys Choir celebrate the magic of the holiday season with a delightful program of Austrian folk songs, classical masterpieces, Christmas hymns, and holiday carols. Tickets at viennaboyschoir.org. When your day gets crazy, go classical. All day and all night. WCRB has the music that'll transform the way you experience the world. 99.5 WCRB, classical radio.
Haydn took a hymn that was pretty
Haydn
famous,
took a hymn.
Pretty well known in his day, and worked it into his 30th Symphony. That's how it picked up the nickname the Alleluia Symphony. Jesus Lopez Cobos conducting the Lausanne Chamber Orchestra.
The Alleluia Symphony. The owl's eyes, the owl's beak, George in the middle, George like Georgia from Gaia, like geometry and gematria, Gaia measure, geometry, Gaia measure, Gaia Mother Earth, personified as the mother of the gods. She is the ground of the whole mythology. Gaia, the G round. G is letter 7. 7 days, the deities of astrology, the 7 days in the Genesis story. Genesis, 7 letters, serpent, 7 letters. Present, the now, the moment, anagram with serpent, and a G-ram of Aries, ram, tetragrammaton, the cerebram, the brain, the Sarah, right hemisphere, Abraham, left hemisphere, intuition, logic, L, logic, G, a logique, and the corpus callosum, the colossal body going down the mid-L, which is what? The bridge, connecting the two, the connection of the neck. The owl of L. Green, the green pine trees of the woods of Woden. In God we trust. This is the Federal Reserve that runs all of this. They own the United States of America. The Federal Reserve, not part of the federal government. They own the federal government. As guess who said on Jim Lehrer, Alan Greenspan, the green of the garden of Gaia. Predators are the predators of this system. this credit belief credo system of mammon, of money, mummy, one eye, monster.